The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. Jesus went off to the other side of the Sea of Galilee, or of Tiberias, and a large crowd followed him, impressed by the signs he gave by curing the sick. Jesus climbed the hillside and sat down there with his disciples. It was shortly before the Jewish feast of Passover. Looking up, Jesus saw the crowds approaching and said to Philip, "Where can we buy some bread for these people to eat?" He only said this to test Philip. He himself knew exactly what he was going to do. Philip answered, 200 denarii would only buy enough to give them a small piece each. One of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said, "There is a small boy here with 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. But what is that between so many?" Jesus said to them, "Make the people sit down." There was plenty of grass there, and as many as 5,000 men sat down. Then Jesus took the loaves, gave thanks, and gave them out to all who were sitting ready. He then did the same with the fish, giving out so much as was wanted. When they had eaten enough, he said to the disciples, "Pick up the pieces left over, so that nothing gets wasted." So they picked them up and filled 12 hampers with scraps left over from the meal of 5 barley loaves. The people, seeing this sign that he had given, said, "This really is the prophet who is to come into the world." Jesus, who could see they were about to come and take him by force to make him king, escaped back to the hills by himself. The Gospel of the Lord. This miracle that we have just read about, of Jesus feeding thousands because they were hungry, is reported by all the Gospel, by the 4 Gospel writers, to show the great importance that the early Christians had given to this great miracle that Jesus performed. Because if you have noticed, it is the same miracles that we read about in the reading, on the first reading in the book of Kings, of Elijah, the man of God, who also, hearing God inspiring him, he also worked the miracle of feeding 200 people. Because the power of God was in the prophet, and because God showed his love even before Jesus came on earth, from the very beginning of creation, God showed his love in abundance to his people. And so also in the Old Testament, all that is reported by the prophet shows clearly the great love that God has for his people. And we are his people. And this great love is shown today by the presence of the Eucharist. That is the greatest symbol after these miracles that we hear about. That is the greatest testament that Jesus has left us with. So that we also are nourished by the food of the Spirit, that is the Eucharist, his own life, his own body and blood. It is the greatest miracle and the greatest show of love that God can give us with the Eucharist. And the greatest thing that we can see in this miracle is that God gives us abundantly, not only what we need, not only the minimum of requirement that we need. When God works, he works in abundance. And so not only just about, but in abundance. And his love is that great. This is the meaning of what we hear. And then there is some little details that different writers in the Gospels speak about. It is not mentioned here, it's mentioned about the boy. But this boy too is one of the protagonists of the miracle. God does not want to work miracles alone. He wants our help. He wants our cooperation. He wants our generosity too. And this little boy showed us. Imagine if this boy said no, of course not. If he was selfish, as sometimes we are, he would say, I brought this food for me to spend the day here for my family. How can I give it to you? When he was asked by the disciples that Jesus wanted that bread and that fish from him, how did he answer? With generosity. He gave them, take them, without question. No question asked. He was asked to give, and he gave. He gave with love. And that's why the miracle was performed, because there was generosity from this boy. And even us, if we want miracles to be also, to be part of our life, we need to be people of great heart. We need to be people of compassion. We need to be people who are always giving. And so like this boy, we need to be generous with what we have, with our talents, with our skills, with our time, with our money. We need to be generous to others, especially those in need. That's how Jesus lived his life here on earth, and that's how he wants us to behave here on earth. Be generous. Don't hold for yourself. Don't be selfish. Don't be greedy, but be generous. Give abundantly. And when you give abundantly, the miracle is performed. This is living our faith. This is what God is asking for us. The Word of God today, this is what He is asking us. When we are in a position to give, don't stop in giving. When we are asked for a smile, when we are asked for a telephone call from someone who is sick, from someone who is alone, don't be selfish. No, pick up the phone and say, how are you? I've missed you. I haven't seen you for a while. Neighbors, friends, old friends, or whatever. It's so nice to be generous this way, to be loving and to be compassionate. And when these things happen without knowing, miracles are performed by us and with us through God and through us, because every time, even there is another detail. When the miracle was performed, Jesus did not ask everybody, or he did not go himself personally to distribute food to show how great he was. In fact, he ran away when they tried to make him king. He did not want to do that, was not performing this miracle to show off, but by the abundance of his love. He asked the disciple, you go and give the food. You go and distribute the food. Organize the 1,000 people that are there, give them what they need, and then don't let anything be lost, but pick the rest that is left over, because nothing must be lost. This is God performing in a super way, and this is the behavior we need to imitate all the time. When we do not put conditions on our generosity, when we give without asking back, what Mother Teresa said, give out with love. It is in giving that you receive, says Mother Teresa. And when we need, and we all need miracles to be performed in our private life, in our family, in our way of living, we need first of all to cooperate with God, to be generous, to be compassionate, and to be loving. Let's read this prayer that we have on the screen. Make us worthy, Lord, to serve our fellow men throughout the world, who live and die in poverty and hunger. Give them through our hands their daily bread, and by our understanding, love, give peace and love. Will you please now stand up?